I think we're ready to start. Once again, thank you so much for coming this morning and for the wonderful comments by councillors. I thank all my colleagues for attending this morning. It was heartfelt to hear some of their comments. So we have on the list 16 speakers this morning. That's a lot. So I'm going to run it a little bit like a committee. For everyone to get a fair chance, we've allotted 5 minutes to all speakers. Now, keeping councillors to 5 minutes is never easy, so I know there's a challenge there. So when I call your name, please come to the microphone, which is right at the end there. Press the on button and you'll see a little red light come on, and then we'll run the clock for 5 minutes. So I'll give a little bit of a notice when you're closing in on 5 minutes to sort of wrap up. We're going to try and take a coffee break about halfway through the deputations, and we welcome everybody to enjoy coffee and muffins, kosher muffins, of course. And once again, I thank everybody for coming, and we'll just get right to the speakers list and start hearing the deputations. First speaker is Michael Westcott. He represents Allies for a Strong Canada. Michael emphasizes Canadian values and our united commitment to counter hate and unite against anti-Semitism in our country. Michael, thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Councillor. This morning, parents across the city got up before the sun came up, and they went frantically onto WhatsApp groups that they've created to see whether or not it's safe to drop their kids off at school. This is how the Jewish community has had to come together to protect themselves. It's been more than a year. It's been more than a year of arson and assault and violent protests and hate. And it is absolutely unacceptable and unconscionable that after a year, we're sitting here in this room right now and having this conversation. What we lack is moral leadership from some of our elected leaders, from some of our elected leaders, and from some of our institutional leaders. Whether it's been Jewish-owned businesses, whether it's been community centers, whether it's been schools. It's unbelievable that I'm sitting here in front of you right now. My name is Michael Westcott. I'm the CEO of an organization called Allies for a Strong Canada. We created Allies for a Strong Canada because we believe that Canadians see what is happening and want to stand in solidarity with the Jewish community and push back against this disgusting wave of anti-Semitism. I've been incredibly heartened by the support that we have received from right across the country, and nowhere has that support been more pronounced than here in the city of Toronto. But there's what I see in my day job, and then there is the response I see on TV and in newspapers. And while I am more pleased than ever to see people who aren't Jewish speaking out about this vile wave of anti-Semitism that we've seen in the city, I've been disappointed that we haven't seen more action. So my job today is to invite every single one of you, and more than invite, implore you to please think concretely about action that can be taken. I don't know why it was possible that Ottawa and Vaughan and Brampton could figure out a way to say it's not okay to have a violent protest in front of a school or a place of worship, and that's something that we struggle with here. But there's one more council meeting left this year, and I would very much like to see something happen, and I know a lot of other people would. I would say that if you're listening to me right now and you're not Jewish and you've asked yourself the question, I see what's going on. I think it's despicable. I saw what happened in Montreal, and I desperately don't want to see that happen here in Toronto, but I don't know what to do. Reach out to any one of the organizations that you see here today. Just put it in Google, you'll find us, we're there, and we can help. But your voice is absolutely critical. If everybody in this room right now picked up the phone and called the mayor's office and said, you know, I heard today about the horrible things that have been happening in the city of Toronto, And I expect you to lead. I expect you to lead with more than just words. I expect to see action. I think we would see things start to happen very, very quickly. Our elected leaders need to hear those messages. I am incredibly heartened by the councillors who have made time today to come and speak about these important issues. I hope that we start to see some of the same from some of your colleagues as well. But I am hopeful for a day where those parents don't have to wake up every morning and ask themselves those horrible questions. You know, it seems like almost every week now I meet a new person who's making active plans to get their family out of Canada. Can you believe that? Can you believe that in 2024 there are people who are saying, I feel so unsafe with my children in this city, in this country, that I am looking at moving to the United States, or I'm looking at moving to Panama, or I'm looking at moving to Argentina. There are people whose families came to this country looking for a better life. My family came to this country looking for a better life, and they're so scared that this is the solution. Each of us has a role to play in this. Each of us as Canadians has a role to play in this fight. And I urge you, if you hear what I'm saying and you think that things need to change and things need to be different, pick up the phone. Your voice has power, and it is only by coming together and speaking with one voice and saying, we demand action, that we are ever going to see things start to change. I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you very much, Michael. Healy Batan. Thank you very much for coming, Healy. Healy is a Jewish elementary school student, has courageously faced extreme anti-Semitism in a Toronto public school.
Hello, my name is Healy. I recently graduated from Faywood Elementary School, a TDSB school where I, along with others, faced targeted hate simply for being Jewish. This wasn't isolated bullying. It was blatant anti-Semitism, tolerated by the very people entrusted with our safety. That's why I'm speaking today to address the alarming rise of hate in our schools and across Canada. No student should feel unsafe or unwelcome because of their identity. Yet I've seen friends ridiculed for being Jewish, Israeli, or from other minority communities like Asian and Indian backgrounds. I've heard slurs against Jews, witnessed praise for Hitler and Nazism in hallways, and endured these attacks myself. The most painful part is that teachers and administrators looked the other way. Their silence spoke volumes, yet we, the children, are taught to watch you and learn from you. But when you are not taking action, we notice. This isn't just a school issue. It reflects the growing hatred across Canada and Toronto. Jewish schools have been shot at multiple times this year. In Montreal, riots and hate-filled rhetoric flood our streets. Our city and political leaders were noticeably absent for the October 7 memorial for innocent lives lost. Let's be clear, this isn't just about anti-Semitism. The rise of hatred against Jews, Muslims, Christians, and people of all backgrounds, cultures, and creeds is tearing at the fabric of our society. This is unacceptable and it demands immediate action. I am Jewish, I am Israeli, I am proud of my heritage. As the indigenous people of Israel, Jews have shared that land with Arab neighbors for centuries, yet we are targeted with anti-Zionist rhetoric that denies our history and identity. This is not just an attack on Israel, it's an attack on who we are. To Mayor Chow, city officials, and Canadian politicians, we need you to stand with us now more than ever. Condemn all forms of hatred, anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiment, and prejudice of any kind. Make our schools, streets, and cities safe for everyone. Show the courage to lead by example so Toronto can become a beacon of unity across Canada. As Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel once said, we must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. No more silence, no more neutrality. Together, students, educators, leaders, and citizens, we can and must end this cycle of hate. Let's fight for a future where no child feels unsafe or unwelcome because of who they are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Healy, for those comments. Reverend Majid El Shafi. Great. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. 25 years ago, I came to this country as a refugee. I came from Egypt, and because of my Christian belief, I was arrested, I was tortured, I was hanged upside down, I was beaten, they put salt and lemon in my open wound, and they crucified me for 2 days and a half like an animal. When I came here to Canada, when I became a refugee and I came here to Canada, I was so proud of what Canada is. Canada is not just a country. Canada is a temple of human rights. Is the hope that the world need to see, is the light in the middle of the darkness. When I took my Canadian citizenship, the Canadian judge looked at me and he said, "Son, what the first thing you want to do as a Canadian?" I told him, "Your Honor, I want to drink beer, watch hockey, and complain about the weather." He said, "Son, you're a true Canadian." I told him, "Thank you, Your Honor, I appreciate you." But there is more of Canada. When I walked in the streets of Toronto, I saw Jewish temples, synagogues, mosques, side by side with the churches, side by side with Hindu temples and Sikhs. I was so proud of who we are. It was the only country that I ever saw in my life that you can have all the worship places side by side and people greeting each other in the morning and afternoon and evening. This is not what Canada, this is not what Toronto that I see today. That's not when I see the Jewish people, Jewish men taking off their kippah, walking in the street out of fear. When I see women removing their Star David out of fear of harassment. Every one of us have the right to demonstrate for whatever they believe as long as peaceful. That's not peaceful demonstrations. And I've been subject to some of them that they attacked my car and they attacked me directly and personally. I see now security around events, Jewish events, synagogues. I see schools being shot at. That's not our Canada, and that's not our Toronto. And the politically correctness that all of us sinking in, I need to tell you something, this is not the time for politically correctness. I am sick and tired of politically correctness. Politically correctness is the very cancer of our Canadian fabric. And that's enough. That's enough. The last thing that I would tell you, that we have to take an action now. Our faith teaches us, faith without action is a dead faith. Now is the time that we support, is the time to stand against evil. I want my Canada back, and I want my Toronto back. My name is Majid Shafi. I'm very proud Egyptian Canadian, and I'm here to support the Jewish people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Majid, and thank you for founding One Free World International. I'd now like to call Janice Laforme. She is a Indigenous advocate with decades of experience. Janice champions Indigenous rights, reconciliation, equity, and mutual respect across communities. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Amin, good morning. My spouse, Harry, regrets very deeply that he's prevented from being with us, and I am the substitute. I'm delivering these remarks for him. Please pretend that I am him, because there are times I will slip in as if they're my words. They are my words too, because I share the same values as my husband, Harry. The remarks I make represent Harry's views as Anishinaabe and a proud member of the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. And I make them as a first-generation Canadian whose grandparents fought in the Dutch resistance in World War II. And I never thought I'd see the day where I said, I am glad my mother is dead. I am glad that my grandparents are dead, that they have not seen what has come to be in this country and what they fought so hard about and against. Anyways, enough of that. Pretend I'm Harry. Treaties were the first binding agreements that the Crown had with Indigenous people at the creation of this country. Canadians profess to honour and respect these treaties. Toronto has land acknowledgements and the medicine wheel in front of the City Hall, announcing its alliance with Indigenous people, and in particular with the Mississauga of the Credit, on whose treaty lands Toronto is situated. And indeed, it is on these treaty lands that there are 8 of all publicly funded universities, more than half of all publicly funded colleges, the 2 largest school boards in Canada, CUPE's headquarters, and our Chief Claire Salt, stands as an ally with the Jewish community and her brothers and sisters. Anyways, treaties of peace and friendship were entered into by settlers and Indigenous people that reflected the original relationship that was based on mutual respect, honor, equality, peaceful coexistence, the sharing of the land. And the treaties were grounded in the 7 sacred teachings of love, respect, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, and truth. I believe that these values are values that are shared by everybody here and by most Canadians in this country. The 7 sacred teachings were given to us by the Creator to teach all of us how to live and move forward together in a good way. Quoting Chief Claire Salt of the Mississauga of the Credit, Anishinaabe are taught to pay attention to our treaty territory for issues that do not align with our values. The Creator gave us a voice and a warrior spirit when it comes to abuse and atrocity. We are paying attention, and we do not like what we are seeing. In 1910, Deputy Superintendent General, Department of Indian Affairs, Duncan Campbell Scott, responding to the appalling high death rate of Indigenous children in the Indian residential schools, stated, "This alone does not justify a change in the policy of the department, which is geared towards the final solution of our Indian problem." Throughout the treaty lands of the Mississauga of the Credit are signs and chants that include, "There is only one solution, Intifada revolution." The phrase Canada used in the 1910s and the Nazis in World War II has been cleverly, callously adapted. As Anishinaabe, and again, I'm speaking for Harry, I share his values, the term in all of its iterations is offensive, hateful, and racist. It takes us back to a dark chapter in our shared history, marked by the death of more than 6,000 Indigenous children. It reminds us of the tragic loss of more than 6 million Jews across Europe during and in the period leading up to the Holocaust. These calls for death of Jewish people are unequivocally anathema to the treaties of peace and friendship and the 7 sacred teachings. Now, the horror of Amsterdam and the violence of Montreal reveals that the falsity of assertions that Intifada revolution is a benign or peaceful call for change. It is not. We hear the words colonize, settler, and decolonizer to justify terror, violence, kidnapping, rape, targeted civilian assassin, massacre. These words are used to assert revolutionary violence by any means necessary, and that all forms of resistance are justified, and we are hearing them in this city and on the treaty lands of the Mississauga of the Credit. Harry and I unequivocally reject these assertions and any allyship with those who hold such views. Those values are abhorrent to the original treaties of peace and friendship. Assertions of allyship with Indigenous people were revealed as lies by the September 18th hijacking of the TDSB Grassy Narrows field trip by the anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian demonstrators. The gall to take the long-standing tragic piece of Indigenous suffering and treat it as irrelevant except to use it for someone else's dogma is evil beyond words. And to use youthful students, children, is criminal. For several hours, Toronto children were removed from the care of their parents and used once again to promote demagoguery, this time to advance the ideology of anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian demonstrators. And the parents were unable to stop it. What a shot across the bow. The first time we saw the abuse of children to promote vile ideology was Indigenous children were stolen from their parents and placed in Indian residential schools to remove them from the influence of the wigwam and to kill the Indian in the child. The last school was closed in 1996. Now, the treaties of peace and friendship are still in effect today. These treaties still govern relationships that all of us have with each other, and they apply equally to those masked thugs screaming and drumming hate on our streets. These people are treaty scofflaws. Now, if Harry were here, he would say, our land, the treaties, our values, hospitality are being abused. Leaders of the City of Toronto and law enforcement, all treaty partners, are allowing this to happen. And every one of us may not say it, but we notice that the mayor of Toronto is not here. And that is a disgrace.
If you could,
13 months since
you're closing in on
October
7
7th.
minutes, if you could.
13
Okay.
months since October 7th. And it seems that Toronto is searching for a legal basis to address the hate running rampant on streets and communities in Toronto. I'm a former Crown. The criminal code has only gotten fatter. But if you don't have or somehow are unaware of all the Canadian laws that are available to you to then enforce the treaties which recognize and are affirmed by the Canadian Constitution and of which you are a partner to. Smarten up before Toronto becomes Amsterdam. Smarten up before Toronto becomes Montreal. It's really simple. Do your job. Do your duty. Do what is right. Stop the hate that overwhelmingly targets our Jewish brothers and sisters. Enforce the law. Enforce the treaties. Miigwech.
Thank you so much for those comments. I'd like to now call Saeed Raza. Saeed is a representative Council of Muslims Against Antisemitism. Saeed advocates for Muslim-Jewish solidarity in the fight against hate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Ladies and gentlemen, Salam Alaikum. My name is Sohail Raza and I represent the Council of Muslims Against Antisemitism and Muslims Facing Tomorrow. I am pleased at this initiative taken by the Antisemitism and Hate Committee on the dark subject of hate. Probably the most repulsive four-letter word in the English dictionary, which describes hate as a feeling of intense and passionate dislike seeking revenge. In this case, as we have seen since October 7th, 2023, hate against the Jewish community. This is not just my opinion. The facts speak for themselves. Anti-Semitic incidents are up 211% since the Israeli-Hamas war. In a global news special, investigations based on documents, interviews, and figures compiled from police forces, the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel had sparked a dramatic surge of anti-Semitism across Canada. Homes, businesses, schools, places of worship, neighborhoods, and institutions have all been targeted in what community leaders are calling an unparalleled spike in hate crimes against Jews. My disappointment as a Canadian and as a Muslim is the question that is on many people's mind, which is there anybody in charge and doing something about this? So what is happening on our streets? Why aren't we clear about certain terminologies? Every hate rally is termed as a pro-Palestinian protest, which is not the case. A pro-Palestinian protest would mean that Palestinians want to live in dignity and peace alongside the existing state of Israel. A pro-Hamas rally, however, and I don't need to stress that this is recorded and I've witnessed it myself, calls for the killing of Jews with slogans like "From the river to the sea" and "Hitler didn't finish his job." This is a Hamas war cry after they committed war crimes on October 7th against Israeli civilians. I have also witnessed the hateful mob taunting and calling out vicious slogans to a group of Jews marking a vigil on the other side of the street in a most peaceful manner. They celebrate somebody, probably a terrorist, called Sinwar. How can you celebrate somebody whose name, the two syllables, are sin and war? As a Muslim, I can give numerous instances from the Quran where we are told that Jews, who are referred to as Ahlul Kitab, people of the book, need to be respected. And the land where Jerusalem is located belongs to the Jews. Bani Israel, or the tribe of Israel, is mentioned 43 times in the Quran. Having said this, I'm amazed that twice there was a firing at a young girls' school, which the authorities claim was a possible hate crime. What other possibilities are there? Target practice? Only pro-Hamas driven and in many cases paid for thugs would attack a hospital, a bookstore, restaurants, and businesses owned by Jews. My friend, hate is a virus, a disease that cannot be cured by popping 2 Tylenols. It has to be surgically removed. So let's just do that and safeguard our country and our city. I'm happy that most politicians stand with the truth and expel hate, but not the ones who missed attending the anniversary of October 7th, and those who would rather attend and dance the night away at a Taylor Swift concert than be concerned that Montreal is burning. We have to stop hate by exposing the disinformation and put more emphasis on education, awareness, and empowering the youth, especially, and the masses. We should work together, as we have started to make Toronto safe again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those comments. Michael Osborne. Michael Osborne is a lawyer and practices in downtown Toronto. He's leading an initiative to mobilize the Catholic community to combat anti-Semitism, and the initiative is called Bring Love. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Councillor. My name is Michael Osborne, and as you said, I practice law in Toronto. I'm the founder of Bring Love, a new lay Catholic organization dedicated to forging and deepening ties between Catholics and Jews, and to combating Jew hatred. We take our name from the prayer of St. Francis, "Where there is hatred, let me bring love." I cannot pretend to speak on behalf of Toronto's 670,000 Catholics, nor can I speak on behalf of the Church. But I can tell you what the Church has said. Jews are our beloved brothers and sisters. Pope St. John Paul II said this in 1986. A Christian cannot be an anti-Semite. We share the same roots. It would be a contradiction of faith and life. Pope Francis said this in 2018, but this teaching goes back nearly a century. It follows that we Catholics and all Christians have an obligation to combat anti-Semitism. We have an obligation to stand with our brothers and sisters. In February 2024, Pope Francis responded to the tsunami of Jew hate that has engulfed the world. He wrote, "The path that the Church has walked with you, the ancient people of the covenant, rejects every form of anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism, unequivocally condemning manifestations of hatred towards Jews and Judaism as a sin against God. Together with you, we Catholics are very concerned about the terrible increase in attacks against Jews around the world. We had hoped that never again would be a refrain heard by the new generations, yet now we see that the path ahead requires ever closer collaboration to eradicate these phenomena. The Bring Love initiative is in its infancy, but we intend to spread this call to action far and wide to all of the 670,000 Catholics in Toronto and millions in Canada. We have also been listening to our Jewish brothers and sisters. We know they are fearful. We know that their children face hatred in schools and universities. We know that some are even asking whether it's time to leave before it gets too dangerous. We know that never again is now. We also know that Jew hatred is not a Jewish problem. It is quite obviously a problem outside the Jewish community. It's a cancer that has spread and metastasized in our society, and we will fight it alongside our brothers and sisters. We also know that Jew hatred never stops with Jews. A society in which it is okay to hate Jews is a society in which it is okay to hate anyone and everyone. And that's happening. Christian churches have been burned down. Hindu celebrations have been attacked. And mosques have been vandalized. Jacques Maritain, a French philosopher who co-founded the Pontifical Institute for Medieval Studies here in Toronto, wrote that the foundation of society is a kind of civic love or friendship. That civic love is being eroded daily. Every attack on Jews, every hateful graffiti, every broken window, every call to globalize the Intifada, or that the final solution is coming, as we saw recently in Montreal. Each of these expressions of hatreds erodes that civic love, and with it, the very foundation of our society. We will stand shoulder to shoulder with our Jewish brothers and sisters. We will bring love where there is hatred. And we will call upon all Canadians to do the same. But to those that we have elected as our leaders, I say this: you must lead and take action. Many of you, not all, some in the room today have been sterling in their support. Many of you at all levels of government have failed to do so. Many have equivocated as hate consumed our cities and danced as rioters smashed windows. They have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. It's time for you to do more than performative tweets. It's time for you to take concrete steps to enforce existing laws against hate speech and even bylaws against demonstrating without permits. It's time for you to do the job you were elected to do, or to make way for those who will.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'd now like to call Jessica and Sammy Seufer. Jessica Seufer is a Toronto small business owner and victim of an anti-Semitic hate crime. She shares her story to emphasize the importance of community solidarity and fighting hate. Her brother Sammy was assistant general manager at Chef's Hall, Toronto, and volunteer with Magan Harut Canada, and is also a victim of an anti-Semitic hate crime and advocates tirelessly for intolerance-free societies. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. He's actually my son. Just want to point that out.
Okay, thank you, brother.
I'm a Jewish Canadian. I was born in Toronto, Canada. I was raised without hate. My family actually makes up multiple ethnicities and religions. My family is actually a great example of Canada that includes tolerance, inclusion, acceptance, always looking at humans for the humans that they are. On August 31st, my son was driving us home from a rally for our hostages, and we were attacked while stopped at a red light. Two individuals, ran up to our vehicle to rip the Israeli flag out of the back seat. My son got out of the truck and was jumped by the person hiding behind the truck bed. I saw this. I got out to aid my son and was also attacked. His head was cut open, my eye was split open, my nose was fractured, and I suffered a concussion from this attack while being told, "Die Jew, burn in hell Jew," simply because we were visibly Jews. The only person that actually came to our aid on a busy Sunday afternoon in downtown Toronto was another Jew. In fact, after the assault, while I stood bloodied with the police waiting for forensics to get there, two men on bikes approached us, one with a toy poodle in his backpack, and felt compelled to tell me how disgusting I am because I'm a Jew. For months, I silently waited for police to arrest them as the male was already known to the police. I watched the hate and violence grow around the world and here at home in Canada, and so I decided to make a video and contact a lawyer because nobody seemed to care what had happened to Jews. We just simply didn't seem to matter. Luckily, people with voices far more powerful than mine, like Matthew Taub, took to our cause, and on Monday I received a call from the Hate Crimes Unit that arrests had finally been made. This is not the Toronto I grew up in. And this started long before October 7th and will continue long after if steps are not taken to return my Toronto to the beloved city that was once a city of tolerance and acceptance, and one that cares when a woman and her son are assaulted, even if they're Jews.
Thank you very much for having me today. It is an honor to be heard on such a large platform, and thank you very much for giving me a voice today. My name is Sammy Soifer, and I'm from Long Island, New York. It's an accent I can't exactly hide, so I'm sorry about that. I'm currently an assistant general manager of a restaurant in Toronto, a volunteer for an organization which stands to protect the Jewish people, and an ex-fireman and EMT. I moved to Canada 6 years ago, and I unfortunately have witnessed more hate than I have ever experienced in my 27 years on this earth. I know you can never get along with everybody, and you can never make everyone happy. Hate, unfortunately, is one of the many feelings that we all share as human beings. The issue is not that there is hate in the world. The issue is now that it is okay to be public about it. Almost 3 months ago, my mom and I were attacked on our way home from a rally for the hostages taken by Hamas on October 7th, 2023. The rally used to be filled with sadness and crying and hugging and togetherness and family. It has now been sabotaged by the opposition, holding up swastikas, dressing up in terrorist uniforms, and spewing hate speech. If you want a representation, that was last week. I don't think I need to repeat the same story that my mom just told you, but at the end of the day, we were attacked because we were Jews. We thank God for people like Aaron Hadida, who create organizations like Magen Herut. Aaron Hadida wants to ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone ever again of any faith. My experience in Toronto with anti-Semitism started before October 7, 2023. In the spring of 2022, I was a bartender at a restaurant downtown. We had a regular that was always kind to me but didn't know that I was Jewish. When we finally had an opportunity to have a beer together when I finished my shift, we did a cheers and I said l'chaim, which is the Hebrew word for cheers to life. So a version of salute, cheers, and things like that. He did not take a sip of the beer. Instead, he told me that I was the enemy and all supporters of Israel are the enemy. He is a member of the indigenous community, and he threatened to send his tribe after mine. Enraged while also scared, I got up and walked home. I told my coworkers and my bosses about this interaction, and I felt uncomfortable to serve him as he is in our bar very frequently. Nobody seemed to care. People that I considered family. and instead decided to sit at my bar with him when they knew that I was uncomfortable, and this man continued to harass me for months. I was never heard, and I was told to handle it on my own. The only option I had to do was to quit, which is something that my family told me is not in our DNA. So I was embarrassed to have the last name of a Soifer who quit. I want everyone to know that anti-Semitism is real, and the hate is real, even in Toronto. The city has done a fantastic job on almost fully eliminating publicly hating certain groups of people because of who they are or what they believe. But even after thousands of years, it pains me to say that it is still okay to hate a Jew. Something needs to be done about this, and action needs to be taken. To everyone else who has been a victim of hate, you are not alone, but we need to be strong and we need to stand up as one. Don't be ashamed of who you are. Don't be scared to tell people who you are. Our ancestors have been through hell to continue the traditions of our people, and now it is our turn to make history. To all of those that are in power who can truly make a difference. In this world, the message is very simple. You need to hear us, and you need to truly understand this issue. I'm not here because I want to complain about the construction noise outside of my building. I'm here because I'm scared. I'm scared to walk outside with a yarmulke on. Don't tell me that you are doing everything you can. I need you to show me. Show me that you will go to battle for what is right, regardless if it costs you a seat at this table. Let the kids go to school safely, and let me walk around wearing a yarmulke while I mourn the death of my best friend. Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you so much for those very moving stories. Mayor Olivia Chow has joined us, and she would like to share a few words.
Sorry, there's a big computer in front of me. Got it. Thank you, Councillor Pasternak, for inviting me to join you this morning. I hear the fear in this room. I'm inspired also, though, by the community and the allyship here. Do know that you are never alone, and we are never alone. It's good to see people of all faith, all the faith leaders coming together for a common cause. It's good to hear the first-hand experience that we just heard about what's happening on our street. Just a few weeks ago, I was at the Holocaust Museum for the Holocaust Education Week. It was the second time visiting there. I was there when it first opened. It was a powerful reminder of our collective obligations to act when there's injustice. When our neighbors experience fear and biases and horrific experience based on history. So when we confront fear, when we confront hate, how do we respond? We have a choice. Do we respond with division? Do we respond with empathy and hope? Sometimes when there's when darkness around us, when it's tough times, we need to continue to reach for the light, continue to believe that there is goodness in each and every one of us. When we believe that, when we reach out, we can connect. When we believe that we can, even when people are full of anger and hate, if we believe there is hope, we are able to then connect with them. We need to continue to be welcoming and compassionate, even though it's close to impossible when times are so tough. We need to keep each other safe. It is our responsibility. It is when we do that, bring out the best of each of us. I know it's hard. With this dangerous rise of anti-Semitism in our city, families are worried about going to a place of worship, sending kids to school, hanging a mezuzah on their door, about just being in public, to be identified, or even just turning around the corner and see the graffiti, whether it's on TTC or on any other public streets, or being verbally, physically assaulted, attacked for being who you are. And that is not acceptable. You know, as your mayor, I've said in many occasions that any assault on the freedom of people practicing their faith is not welcome here. Violence in all its forms, even psychological violence, is not welcome here. Anti-Semitism is not welcome in this city, and I have repeatedly condemned it. Together with Deputy Colle, Councillor Pasternak, all the councillors here, Councillor Bradford, that we've been working hard. Starting in October of last year in November, where we passed a comprehensive package of policies. Can we do better to implement them? Yes, we can. Of course we can. No one is perfect, but we need to continue to do so. The police are saying that we don't have enough resources, which is why we appointed our budget chief, Shirley Carroll, on the police service board. And for the first time in many years, the board have just approved, with Councillor Lily Chan, who's also on the board, a hiring plan that would have more police on the street. That they will have every school, recruitment school, 4 times a year, maximum number of recruits, 90 students recruiting, so that there will be an ongoing infuse of number of police on the street. That is what you've been saying, that is what you need. We heard you, because even just at different meetings, you said we need more protection, and that is what we're doing. And that 5-year staffing plan is our commitment. We've also heard it's not just the police, it's the bylaw enforcement officer protecting our neighborhoods, our businesses, our schools, our place of worship. We've heard the community clearly when they are expressing, and all of you expressing fear and worry, felt your anguish, a clear feeling of loss for the place where you once felt safe. Let's rebuild that faith together. It may be a leap of faith, but it needs to happen. It needs to be rebuilt. I heard it when I stood side by side with Rabbi Yoko Fredal to address the community at Beis Musha Elementary School, together with Councillor Pasternak, following the gunshots that was horrifically fired at school. Councillor Colle was also there too, Deputy Mayor. I felt it when I spoke at the Pride of Israel Synagogue's evening of solidarity against hate, to support the community during the times of fear. But through it all, I've also seen so much hope. Even at this difficult time, I know that we can work to make real promise that calls to us from our city's coat of arms. That diversity is our strength. Those are not just words. Those are the pledges we make to each other, that I have made to you as your mayor. And this room right now is an excellent, beautiful example that we're hearing each other, that we are going to hold it tight, that we will work together as much as we can. I was there on Mel Lastman Square, joining other councillors here last year. This year, I should have been there. There's no excuse. There's any number of problems on communication front. That is my office, my problem. Okay, I should have been there. I know. I apologized about, I don't know how many times, but enough times. I've said it publicly. In terms of action, I met with every principal of all the Jewish schools, including JCC, Amsterdam JCC, with the chief. Was it a public meeting? No. We met just before the high holidays, just before the commemoration. And we talked about what the police and others can do. I've also met with CJA, United Jewish Appeal, and all the association and others. Were those meetings public? No, they were not. I met with the JCC, Amsterdam. Was that meeting public? No. That's okay, because I cannot, in some of those instances, broadcast all the action, all the plan that the police are doing. Some things need to be confidential. Let me tell you, if you continue to not believe in me, how do we build a path forward? I am your mayor. Under the Police Act, no politician, whether I'm on the police service board, whether I'm mayor of Toronto, or Councillor Pasternak, we have no power to direct the operation of the police. In fact, allow me to finish. Allow me to finish. That once I did something wrong, okay? I said to the police quite a few years ago, they should de-escalate on a completely separate incident. And for that, I violated the Police Act. I was told to leave the police service board. Okay? So no politician, even if you're a premier, can say to the police, you must do that, because that is what democracy is about. There's a strong division between those people that make the law. We could actually establish policy. We cannot say to the police, you arrest that person.
So are you saying
you don't want us to be able to do that, then you can go in and arrest that person. You need to arrest that person. You don't want the police to take direction. The police service board is 7 members. 3 of them are councillors. Councillor Lily Chang is on the police service board. It has a civilian chair. Her name is Ann Morgan. And 3 members are appointed by the provincial government. So the police service board that hire and fire the police chief, that give policy direction to the police, that's 7 board members. Okay, I think it's important to know that, to understand that. So the police service board established policies to the police chief. They hire or fire the police chief, and the police chief then make operation decisions as to whether they should or should not arrest someone. That's up to the chief. It's up to the police service. And the police board member, there are 4 members that are the combination of 7 board members. I think it's important to know that, because there is a conception of, maybe misconception, that the mayor of Toronto can dictate and order the chief what to do. But Councillor Pasternak, because it's your meeting, and so is Deputy Mayor Colle and Councillor Bradford, I think what I just said in the last 5 minutes is precisely the policy of the Ontario government. I think we need to acknowledge that, and I think you should be very clear that everything that I said was according to the law.
Yeah, no, we have been on that corner peacefully for a year, and about 4 weeks ago, mass protesters masked, and there's a failure in the law right there. How they can run around chanting hateful chants, genocide to Jews, disparaging remarks calling for the destruction of Israel, taunting us across the street, waving swastikas. I mean, it is basically sick. And in many in our community feel our arms are tied, our hands are tied. We call the province, we call the Ministry of the Attorney General. They say go call your bylaw enforcement. We call bylaw, they say it's not safe. We call police, they say that's not true. We can make it safe for bylaw enforcement. And then there's a whole other ideology of hiding behind the charter. So we have a mess on our hands. And we're not getting help from the RCMP either. So there's the federal government. So it is a total institutional failure, I think, on how to manage the situation. And we have
Suggest we could do it going forward.
Well, I mean, I don't want to tie up this whole room, but basically we need, it is extremely difficult to successfully prosecute a hate crime in this country. We should be going for statutory bylaw enforcement to create a new level of civility. And only bylaw enforcement can stop these hateful chants, the blockage of roads, the harassment of Jewish business owners, and of course we need to give police the resources they need to prosecute those. And I would add that there's a failure in the judicial system as well. So this is and we have someone who's going to be talking in a minute about these issues. We can't solve it here, but I think you've heard the room loud and clear. We need a universal condemnation of this. This is not charter protected stuff. Waving swastikas and calling for the genocide of Jews. This is disgraceful. It's illegal, and yet we feel frustrated that the perpetrators are not brought to justice. And the conversation goes all the way up to Ottawa, through Queen's Park, down the municipal level. It's a systemic failure of society to grapple with this. So, do I have easy answers? I've given you a snapshot.
Can I add one more thing? I think that the city of Toronto actually does have a say when it comes to policing. We know you control the police funding. We know as well that you try to reduce the police funding. Police need accelerated resources, and that is one of the supports the city can especially espouse.
The City of Toronto this year provided every single dollar that they've asked for.
After a lot of lobbying.
And last police board, Councillor Chan, correct me if I'm wrong, the police service board approved a 5-year staffing plan that would enable 91, is maximum number of people hired per year. Okay, and that was just approved at the police service board. It's coming to the budget committee for approval.
After tremendous pressure, public pressure.
No, well, the police service board, with the leadership of the City of Toronto budget chief, which I appointed, I do want you to know, just to be clear, that the City of Toronto, under my leadership, have Shirley Carroll, which is the budget chief, to be a member of the police service board to deal with their budget, okay? And under her leadership, first time in 8 years, because the numbers have actually not caught up. And what the chief has been saying and what the police service, what the association has been saying is true. The number of officers per population have dropped tremendously, okay? But that was created in the last 5-6 years. And Deputy Mayor Colle knew that, okay? So it is because of Councillor Sherry Carroll and Lily Chang and other councillors there on the police board that they approved a 5-year staffing plan, first time in a decade. Because it used to be that they would not hire anyone, and then they hire some. It was impossible for the chief to establish a working deployment. So I think it's important to know that. Since you raised it, I have to address it.
Okay, so I understand, Mayor Chow, you're going to sign the proclamation on the way out. I think that's the message I have here. Yeah, okay. But we are barely halfway through the speakers.
Absolutely. Just respectfully, I just want to say I appreciate that there's been a 5-year plan put in place. We don't have 5 years.
Yeah. No, they graduated. I just graduated. No, it's not a 5-year. I just yesterday, 2 days, last night, graduated 91 officers. It's the third class, okay, of 160 officer was graduated last year, just 6 months ago. Another 160 was graduated, okay? And then 91 just graduated. So in total, you're looking at 300 plus officer that are now coming out on your street.
Thank you, Mayor, for attending and sharing your remarks. Reverend Jason Bias, and then after that, it'll be Mark Sandler.
Like Mayor Chow, I cycled here today. I did that not because I'm used to rooms like this. I've never been in a room like this before. I did it because my friends asked me. And I'm the 12th senior minister of Timothy Eaton Memorial Church. We're a United Church of Canada congregation. I would have loved Mayor Chow to hear that. But when you embarrass someone, they're not going to stay. And they're not going to hear all of us. So I'm here thinking about the Bible study I taught last night on Mary of Nazareth. And when I talk about Mary, I think about my Jewish elder siblings in faith. I think about my Roman Catholic siblings in faith. I was teaching away on Mary, and I had a friend there who was injured as a child and was told he would never walk properly. You might be able to hear my accent also. Where's my brother from Long Island? Is he still in here? Long Islander's not here. I'm from North Carolina originally. I'm a new Canadian. I've just recently become a citizen. And in North Carolina, our most famous son is either Billy Graham or Michael Jordan, depending on your perspective. And so my parishioner from New Zealand heard that Billy Graham was coming to New Zealand to speak. And he had his family wheel him into the place where Billy Graham could pray for him. Billy Graham is not into this. This is not what he does. Dr. Graham prays for him, and today he walks with a limp. Now, people have said to him, if that was a proper miracle, you would have no limp. And I said to him, you're like Jacob. You're the father of the 12 tribes, the patriarchs. When Jacob wrestles with the angel by the river Jabbok, he is left with a limp for the rest of his blessed life. You might know Jacob's other name. It's Israel. When I phoned my rabbi colleagues after the October 7th massacre, their response was chilling. I just got into town. I have an accent like this. I barely know where the washroom is. Not the bathroom, the washroom. Do you see what I did there? They said, thank you for calling. No one has phoned. Usually when something terrible happens to us, people phone. But maybe because this is about the Middle East, liberal Christians like me feel divided loyalties. We get nervous and we clam up. Better to say nothing than to say the wrong thing. But there are not two sides to murder. We should have flooded our Jewish elder siblings with phone calls letters, cards, presents. When a mosque was attacked in Quebec City, Rabbi Yael Splansky of Holy Blossom Temple organized her synagogue to surround the nearest masjid with Jewish people holding hands. 6 other mosques said, "Can we have hand-holding around our mosque also?" To get to our Abrahamic siblings, you have to go through us. That's how you respond to a friend in need. So my church, that I'm so blessed to serve, got to work with 3 other congregations planning an interfaith prayer service. Beth Tzedek Congregation, Holy Blossom Temple, Grace Church on the Hill, and my bunch, Timothy Eaton Memorial Church, gathered for song, prayer, and mutual comfort. I've not seen my building that full except for Christmas, Easter, or the unusual giant funeral. Each faith leader spoke for 5 minutes, and I said, we Christians have often thought to exalt Jesus, we need to excise his Jewishness. Despite his Jewish mother, first followers, the writers of his New Testament, and his family today, we had Holocaust survivors thanking us, saying we have never felt safe or welcome in a Christian church, except for those who had been hidden by a monastery or a parish. They knew what it means to choose a hider, someone that you trust, who'll take in your family in case the worst should happen. I don't know of a non-Jew who designates a hider. Do you? On the way into that first interfaith service, Rabbi Steve Warnick of Beth Tzedek handed me a printed out email. It was my United Church of Canada denouncing Israel. This was before Israel had done anything besides suffer the most grievous attack since the Holocaust. And my rabbi asked, what exactly is your relationship to the United Church of Canada? I said, we give them money and they embarrass us. Okay, he said, this prayer service is our response. And 2 of the 3 Abrahamic faiths, often at odds but never more united than that night, proceeded to sing, pray, cry, embrace. And we showed the world what I've also learned from my indigenous friends and leaders. God's gifts aren't for us. They're through us for everybody else. God's gifts aren't for us. They're through us for everybody else. So may the God of Israel, Jesus, and all people bring peace. And to quote my Lord and Savior, release the captives right now.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now call Mark Sandler. Mark is a distinguished criminal lawyer and chair of the Alliance of Canadians Combating Antisemitism.
It is with a level of frustration that I address you today because I've heard some things said that I feel obliged to correct. And I will outline for you what I think the subject matter of today's meeting should be, and that is, what can the city actually be doing to address anti-Semitism here? And I haven't heard the answers, and I believe I have some of those answers for you. But I want to start just for those who are unfamiliar with our work, by saying that I am the chair of the alliance described by Councillor Pasternak. We now have 47 community organizations that have joined us. They include Jewish and non-Jewish, Indigenous leadership, Catholic, Hindu, Muslim, right across the spectrum. And that is because we take our strength from a coalition of allies who wish to fight anti-Semitism and all kinds of hate. I've been combating hatred, including anti-Semitism, for almost 40 years. And we're doing it through advocacy, education, training, as well as respectful dialogue. But I want to focus on something that I'm doing that is relevant to the question that I think is most germane to today's discussion. And that is what the city can actually be doing to address the hate that now exists. Because my activities now include the training and education of police and prosecutors on legal remedies to combat hate. And I've been doing that training across the country. And let me tell you unequivocally, let us stop saying that the criminal law does not have the tools available to combat the hate that is occurring in our city and in our country. People of good faith say it, others say it as well. It is simply not true. Similarly, I understand the impediments to a prosecution for willful promotion of hatred, which is the section that's most commonly used. We have a wealth of criminal law provisions that exist in this country that are applicable to the activities that we are seeing on our streets. For example, if protests involve the blockages of roads and highways of any kind, of bridges, we have mischief, the interference with the lawful use and enjoyment of property. We have unlawful assembly. We have criminal intimidation that specifically addresses trying to induce people to do things through the blockages of roads and highways. So stop telling me that the criminal law is inadequate to address the hate that we are seeing across the country. It's not true. In addition to that, and I can tell you that is part of the educational experience that I give to police officers, and this is not a criticism of the police force either in Toronto or elsewhere. We have a lot of good people who want to be trying to do the right thing, that understand the situation, but we have to stop misinforming law enforcement that their tools are inadequate and we need legislative reform. I have proposed legislative reform, but it's not necessary in order to get to the bottom of what we're dealing with. Second of all, municipal bylaws exist that are not being enforced. You heard it from Councillor Pasternak. I know they're being enforced in other jurisdictions. I've asked the Toronto Police Service, and I think they're committed to looking at what's happening in Calgary and Ottawa and other jurisdictions where the municipal bylaws are being used. Don't tell me that people can walk the streets of Toronto setting off smoke bombs in the city when there's a municipal bylaw prohibits it. Don't tell me that you can block roads and highways when there are specific provisions that exist under our municipal bylaw that deals with the temporary obstruction of roads and highways. And don't tell me, and this is currently policy on the part of the city, that permits need not be obtained for protests of the kinds that we're dealing with because obtaining a permit would interfere with freedom of speech or freedom of assembly. The jurisprudence is abundantly clear that cities can impose permit requirements to regulate the time, place, and nature of the activities that are taking place on our streets without impairing in an unconstitutional way the freedom of speech and freedom of assembly that we all enjoy. So it's time, number one, for the City of Toronto to get on board and consider the use of permit powers in order to regulate the kinds of protest activity we're seeing. Number two, the mayor was correct to the extent to which, and I wish she could hear this from me, she was correct to the extent to which she said that politicians cannot direct police as to laying charges in individual cases. That's true, but political will starts at the top. When we talk about zero tolerance for anti-Semitism in our city, the police have to understand that there is a true commitment on the part of the City of Toronto for zero tolerance for anti-Semitism and everything that entails. And how can that be incorporated in policing? Well, we have one of the members of the Police Services Board here, so she's very familiar with this. There is no current policy that exists in policing in Toronto on how to police public order events. They're working on the development of the policy, but none exists. None exists. So what can the city do? The city can lend support to a rapid consideration of what that policy should look like. I've made recommendations to the board as to what it should be and what it can include as a matter of policy, not directing an individual case. As a matter of policy is the robust use of the criminal code, of municipal bylaws, of provincial laws under the Highway Traffic Act and other legislation to get tough on hate protests. And that kind of policy does not exist in Toronto and has to exist in order to give direction from the top. So again, let's not hear that politicians are unable to direct where policing goes. They can't do so in individual cases, but it's where the will to prosecute commences. And so that's important. The next point, why can't the city of Toronto create legislation that immunizes places of worship and places of sensitivity from protest activity? It's being done in other jurisdictions. It's been done in Vaughan. It's been done in BC. It's been done in a variety of places. And I can tell you there is no constitutional impediment to it whatsoever, and it's long overdue. The fourth point that I would make, that where the city is, with respect, inadequate, is I've reviewed the city's policies that are in effect. I've reviewed the city manager's most current plan on dealing with hate. I've reviewed what is incorporated in that, which is an initiative on dealing with anti-Semitism. And the definition of anti-Semitism that is in the continuing documents now is outdated. Why is it outdated? Because we can have people say, I believe in zero tolerance for anti-Semitism, without recognizing the modern manifestation of anti-Semitism, which is the misuse of anti-Zionism by simply substituting the word Zionist for Jew, and therefore attempting to immunize activity from prosecution. Now, I want to be clear about this. I'm a strong proponent in freedom of expression. I'm a strong proponent in freedom of assembly. I'm a strong proponent that Israel, like any other country, is entitled to be the subject of robust criticism for its policies or its practices or its government or what have you. But those who hate us as members of the Jewish community have misconstrued, deliberately so, what the IRA definition of anti-Semitism says. It does not immunize Israel from criticism. It does not permit the prosecution of people for merely criticizing Israel and applying the same kinds of criticisms that are leveled against other countries. But what it recognizes is where the line is then crossed into anti-Semitism in the way Israel's described. So to give you examples, don't tell me that it isn't hate speech when you call for the death of all Zionists when 91% of Canadian Jews are Zionists. Don't tell me that labeling all Zionists without distinction as racist, genocidal, and evil is immune from prosecution. Don't tell me that chanting from water to water, Palestine shall be Arab, is not a genocidal chant. Don't tell me that calling for the violent destruction of the state of Israel and its supporters is immunized from prosecution or charges because the word Jew isn't mentioned. Don't tell me that intimidating Canadian Jews through deliberate choices of protest venues in proximity to Jewish community centers, places of worship, businesses, or neighborhoods is immunized from prosecution. Don't tell me that blocking roads, tunnels, or bridges to compel others to change what they're entitled to do or not do doesn't constitute a criminal offense. Don't tell me that chanting support for designated terrorist organizations and their terrorist leaders or calling for global intifada by any means necessary doesn't make it clear that that is a call for the destruction of the entire state of Israel, and therefore all Israeli Canadians all Jews who are supporters of the state of Israel. Don't tell me any of those things. Don't tell me that they're immune from prosecution. So, if the city really wants to show, not simply say, it has zero tolerance for anti-Semitic hatred, if the city wants to avoid the Montreal riots, if the city wants to reduce the likelihood of an Amsterdam, then one of the things that the city can do is adopt as part of its policies the IRA definition of anti-Semitism and implement it as a guidance for how the city operates.
Well, Mark, your comments are fascinating, and this is crucial information, but
time marches.
We've been most generous at 12 minutes.
You have been.
So anyway, unless you want to wrap up, I want to thank you very much. It's a very sobering lesson that you've brought today. Very judicial, and I've experienced this blame game and among the three levels of government and the excuses, and believe me, it is extremely frustrating.
Thank you. So I will say nothing more other than the fact that if I'm nothing if not passionate about these issues, but I wanted to conclude by saying that there are many people in this room who are allies, many, as it turns out, members of our alliance, and it is the non-Jewish allies that we have in this room that really give us hope that we will be supported in the causes that I've identified. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark, very much. Just a reminder, coffee and muffins over here. Do not be shy, and feel free to take a doggy bag on your way out when we're done. I'd like to now call Pastor Judith James. Pastor James is one of the pastors at the Revival Time Tabernacle, an historic church in the city of Toronto. She's also the founder and CEO of the Beautiful Foundation, a charitable organization serving women and children who have survived domestic violence and substance abuse since 2011. I should also add that when dozens of people were sleeping outside our intake center on Peter Street, newcomers to our country, for weeks, outside sleeping on the sidewalk, it was Pastor James and the Revival Time Tabernacle that took them in. So once again, I publicly thank you for that. And I thank you for being here.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to be here. Good morning, everyone, and to all protocols observed. I want to thank you so much for your time in having our voices heard on such a significant platform. This conversation is centered around anti-Semitism and the racial acts of hate toward our Jewish brothers and sisters. This is about one's right to even exist, to exist in peace in the places of worship, peace in their educational institution, and peace in their lives. I attended a Abraham Global Initiative 2 weeks ago and was attacked by oppressors rallying outside, shouting, "Why would I support the Jews? Don't I respect the skin that I'm in?" I love the skin that I'm in. I was born black and I will die black. And it's for this reason that I stand with anyone, and I stand with you all, experiencing hate toward your God-given gift of your color and your ethnicity. I'm also aware that as a black woman, it is disturbing to always be questioned solely based on the color of your skin, not by any act exhibited, not for the content of one's character, but questioned and judged based on the shade of your skin or where you are from. And I'm sorry. I stand for the black community. I stand for the Christian church, centered in York Center, and for that I say that I'm sorry that you're going through this. We all have the right to live proudly the way that God has made us. And today we stand in solidarity and advocate with the Jewish community. Whoever hates you because of the color of your skin is wrong, and I would be so bold to say evil. So to hate Jewish people solely because they were born Jewish is evil. We all have the right to exist. A pastor likes to hear amen. To even have this conversation, though it's welcoming, it's truly heartbreaking to me. To be hated, to be threatened, to feel scared because of your religious beliefs and the culture and ethnic background is wrong. It's dark, it's hateful, and it's evil. And so I say this quote, like I've said in some of the services that we've held around the massacre. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can. And I will add, evil cannot drive out evil, only God can.
Great, thank you.
We should love our neighbors as we love ourselves. So I encourage us to keep raising our voices to those who are trying to be silenced. Bring them home. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pastor James, for those remarks, and thank you once again for the great work you're doing in the community. I'd like to now invite Justin Chow. Justin is an allyship advisor and a recent graduate to the University of Toronto. He's a published writer in the Toronto Sun and the Canadian Jewish News. Justin is also a skilled public speaker who has led workshops and advocacy campaigns to combat anti-Semitism and build cross-cultural allyship. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Chow, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak today as an allyship advisor for Allied Voices for Israel. I'm here because I believe deeply in building a city where every community can live openly, safely, and without fear. Right now, that vision feels increasingly at risk. Anti-Jewish hatred has become more visible and alarming over the past year. A Jewish girls' school came under gunfire, synagogue windows have been shattered, and Jewish students face regular harassment on campuses. Online spaces are filled with hateful rhetoric that emboldens real-world violence. These are not isolated incidents. They reflect a broader pattern that we cannot ignore. And I've seen this impact my friends personally as well. Many Jewish students I know have been the targets of anti-Semitic comments, intimidation, and hostility. Some fear openly expressing their Jewish identity, unsure how it will be received, especially in spaces where they're surrounded by non-Jewish peers. This is not the kind of environment where learning and connection can thrive. Students want to see change, but they can't do this alone. They need their leaders to care enough to take bold and concrete action to protect them, to advocate for them, and to listen to and understand their experiences. And as a non-Jewish, gay, Chinese immigrant, witnessing this hatred unfold hits close to home. I often think about what it would feel like if I were in their shoes, if I were the one being targeted simply for who I am. It's a frightening thought, and I hope we never get to that place in our city. That's why I want to use whatever power and empathy I have to stand alongside my friends who are living through this right now. Jews are being singled out and harassed in ways that no community should ever have to face. If these acts were directed at others, whether newcomers, other religious minorities, or LGBTQ+ individuals, the outrage would be immediate and loud. Yet, when it comes to anti-Semitism, we are often met with hesitation, excuses, or indifference. This double standard is not just unacceptable, it's dangerous. And so to our elected officials, I must say this. Jewish students and the Jewish community at large are watching. They're looking to you to take action, to treat anti-Semitism with seriousness it deserves, and to respond as decisively to hate against Jews as you would to hate against any other group, But the question is, will you act? Action means implementing enforceable policies to protect Jewish students on campuses. It means funding programs that foster interfaith and intercultural understanding and resilience. It means equipping schools with tools to educate students about anti-Semitism and the consequences of hatred. And it means speaking out clearly and consistently against all forms of bigotry, no matter where they occur. But this isn't just about institutional responsibility. Each of us has a role to play. Hatred is not inevitable. It's learned, and it can be unlearned. Every action, no matter how small, matters. And that might mean speaking up when you witness anti-Jewish hatred, listening to someone's experiences with an open heart, especially students, or challenging your own assumptions. And to the Jewish community here today, you are not alone. There are many of us standing with you, ready to support and amplify your voices. And to everyone else, know this. Allyship is not about being perfect. It's about showing up, taking meaningful actions, and learning as we go, consistently. And this summit here is a reminder of what can happen when people come together to confront hate. But it's also a reminder that this work does not end here. It's ongoing, and it demands persistence, courage, and commitment. Let us leave today ready to act, not just for those facing hate today, but to ensure that no community in the city ever has to feel unsafe for simply being who they are. Thank you.
Jason, thank you very much for your comments. I'd now like to call on Jay Rosenzweig. Jay is the CEO of Rosenzweig & Company, a leadership advisory firm, author of the annual Rosenzweig Report on Women, and chair of Erwin Kotler's Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, dedicated to pursuing justice through the protection and promotion of basic human rights whenever they are threatened around the globe. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Councillor Pasternak. Good morning, councillors, faith leaders, community leaders, and distinguished guests. My name is Jay Rosenzweig, and I serve as chair, as Councillor Pasternak mentioned, of Erwin Kotler's Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights. It is a privilege to stand with you at City Hall, united against anti-Semitism, hate, and injustice.
I'll call you next.
Anti-Semitism and hate are spiraling out of control in Toronto, across Canada, and around the world. These incidents remind us that hate and division are not confined to history books. They are present, escalating, and demand our immediate attention. That is why we are here today, to confront this crisis and advocate for decisive, unified responses. As we all know, Professor Kotler has been the target of an Iranian assassination plot. He has described this as a wake-up call for all of us. Iran's campaign of transnational repression is not just a threat to individuals. It's a direct assault on our shared values of democracy, human rights, and security. These threats, both transnational and domestic, demand urgent action to defend freedom and justice. We all share a stake in each other's humanity. When hatred or injustice takes root, it diminishes us all. Online platforms, especially social media, have been breeding grounds for manipulation and division, often targeting young people. To confront hate, we must reclaim truth as our foundation, find points of commonality, and focus on what brings us together. This fight against hate must extend beyond one community. Anti-Semitism and hate are part of a broader pattern of division, and no group is immune. When we build alliances across communities, we find strength in our shared humanity. I've been working with Van Jones on forming a Black Jewish coalition because these alliances are vital. Van has laid out a proposed framework of shared causes, the 5 H's as he puts it, that the Black and Jewish communities can rally around, including advocating for hostages, combating hate, eliminating terrorist groups such as Hamas, who he describes as freedom takers, not freedom fighters, and supporting the Jewish people's right to self-determination in our indigenous homeland. Hostage advocacy deeply resonates when we remember that members of the Black community were forcibly brought to North America against their will. Similarly, the Black community understands the dangerous repercussions of hate, and their support helps us all stand together strongly against anti-Semitism and racism. We must build alliances with all communities, as I've seen firsthand through partnerships with Muslim, Asian, and Indigenous communities, some of whom I thankfully and appreciatively see here today. When Jewish people speak with Indigenous communities in Canada as one Indigenous people to another, it fosters understanding. Finding commonality is not just possible, it's essential. Closer to home, my Rosenzweig report on women in leadership, now in its 20th year, emphasizes the urgency for justice, equity, and the protection of women's and girls' rights, an issue brought into sharper focus after the atrocities of October 7th. The report features voices from diverse backgrounds, showing that while we may not always agree, we can still find common ground and work together to advance shared goals. Together we can build a world where disagreement sparks dialogue, not hate, where respect is the foundation, not the exception, and where the humanity we share shines brighter than the forces that seek to divide us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. I know we're going a little bit out of order here, but I'd now like to call Judith Weinroth. I know we're going a little late and some people have to leave, so we will get to everybody. And at some point I may pass it on to my vice chair, Councillor Bradford, for a few minutes.
Is it still morning? Yes, good morning. I'm Dr. Judith Weinroth. I'm here today representing DARA, Doctors Against Racism and Antisemitism. I'd like to dedicate my remarks today to my late father, Rabbi Irwin Shield, who was one of the co-founders of Christian-Jewish Dialogue of Toronto. He was a Holocaust survivor. He died this year very upset by what he was seeing on the streets of Toronto, which reminded him of what was going on when he was arrested as a teenager in Germany on Kristallnacht. So keep that in mind when I'm speaking. Now, DARA, Doctors Against Racism and Antisemitism, is an interfaith volunteer grassroots organization of healthcare professionals established 15 years ago to identify and counter racism and antisemitism in the medical, scientific, and academic realms. Since its inception in 2009, DARA has had many successful accomplishments, but unfortunately, especially in the last year, since October 7th, 2023, anti-Semitism in the GTA has been growing, and DARA has had many issues to deal with. Today I will highlight just a few of them, specifically related to academia and to the impact on patient care for Jews and Israelis in Toronto. Students and members of the public have an obligation to follow University of Toronto's Code of Conduct when they are on campus. U of T administrators have an obligation to enforce their code to ensure that a civil environment for learning exists. Because U of T administration permitted violations of their own code, Jewish students, staff, and faculty unavoidably felt threatened when pro-Palestinian encampments were in place on the campus. Over 100 Jewish doctors who are graduates or faculty of the Tamarti Faculty of Medicine, TFOM, at U of T, supported by DARA, officially disaffiliated from the U of T to express their concerns about the university's failure to enforce the code and failure to deal with the encampment promptly. Jewish, Israeli, and Zionist students at the TFOM have been especially impacted. Learners have reported to us that they need to hide their Jewishness and Zionism to get accepted to the medical school and to succeed in their undergraduate and graduate studies. Although there is no accurate data about the number of Jewish students applying to TFOM, we hear of Jewish students hiding their religious identity on applications, even fearing that their Jewish-sounding names may impact their chance of acceptance. Jewish students feel unsafe sharing their identity with the school once admitted and underreport their Jewish heritage in surveys. Statistics from the Jewish Medical Students Association at U of T indicate that there are only 52 Jewish members in total, representing all 4 years of medical school. That includes only 11 first-year Jewish students out of a class of 290. What has happened to all the Jewish students?
Calling the backbenchers.
DEI policies and overt hate at medical schools have negative consequences on Jewish students and staff. I want you to listen carefully to this. A recent report submitted by Dr. Lisa Salomon on behalf of the Canadian Federation of Jewish Medical Association concludes, in summary, medical schools are so unsafe for Jewish faculty members and learners that it is hard to imagine recommending that any Jewish learner apply to a Canadian medical school. We at DARA have noted that the proposed admission criteria, which have been changed, for the new Toronto Metropolitan University Medical School would have made it nearly impossible for Jewish students to be accepted.
You gotta go. Yeah.
The 2024 Temerty Faculty of Medicine graduation ceremony was very disturbing, and I don't know how many of you actually saw it. Despite having been advised about proper protocol, several students were allowed to graduate, this is from medical school, while wearing keffiyehs and carrying Palestinian flags, while the faculty on stage clapped. Can you imagine how Jewish graduates and their families felt during that ceremony that was supposed to be congratulating them on their achievements? How comfortable would you feel being treated as a patient by one of these new graduates who express hate and do not follow protocol? Can Jewish patients trust that these new physicians will apply appropriate treatments in their practices to their Jewish patients? Some Jewish faculty members at U of T have expressed concern about their ability to even teach these learners in their postgraduate training. DARA has had productive meetings and will continue to meet with the Dean of the Medical School and other administrators at the Faculty of Medicine to address our concerns. We at DARA have also been made aware of doctors in the GTA who have posted anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist diatribes on social media. At what point does free speech merge into hate speech? Will Jewish, Zionist, and Israeli patients be safe in their care? Personally, I would not feel safe. Most recently, the chair and vice chair of the Governing Council of the University of Toronto refused to accept a motion by one of its members proposing that the council condemn acts of anti-Semitism on campus and advise the administration to implement strategies to effectively protect students, faculty, and staff from this discrimination. In response to this refusal, which quashed the opportunity to consider the motion, DARA issued a statement criticizing the council and U of T for failing to protect Jewish learners, faculty, and staff, excluding Jews from the safeguards extended to all other ethnic groups at the university, while anti-Semitism on campus skyrockets. DARA has called on the Ontario government to appoint a supervisor in place of the U of T Governing Council until a properly functioning council is constituted. Pro-Palestinian demonstrations are taking place regularly on the streets of Toronto and becoming more violent. At one demonstration, Mount Sinai Hospital was specifically targeted. Is it not time for Toronto to take better control of these hateful rallies and introduce bylaws prohibiting such demonstrations within 100 meters of vulnerable infrastructure, as was recently done by the Mayor of Long? I'd like to thank you for asking Dara to participate in this Toronto Interfaith Summit on Antisemitism and Hate. This forum presents a significant opportunity for interaction and support moving forward from the various faith and community leaders who are participating here today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Judith. I will now ask Henry Wolfond to come to the podium here. Henry's a business leader and philanthropist who works tirelessly to strengthen the Jewish community and combat hate through several organizational leadership roles. Henry, 5 minutes, the floor is over to you.
Well, thank you, and welcome to my 5 minutes of fame. I'm not a politician or a practiced orator, so I've got a lot of tough acts to follow. But less than a week ago, I flew to outer space with Blue Origin, and it was the fulfillment of a dream formed in a little boy 60 years ago. Thank you, Councillor Pasternak, Mayor Chow, councillors, and each of the faith leaders and speakers who stood up today. I'm humbled. Thank you for your moral clarity in standing up against the world's oldest hatred. Today, Jew hatred based on myths, conspiracies, and lies are now expressed openly in our streets and amplified 24/7 on social media as open calls for genocide, mostly in the guise of anti-Zionism. Let's make no mistake that anti-Zionism is blatantly anti-Semitism. Throughout my adult life, I've been a volunteer for causes to improve lives, and today I chair the Confronting Anti-Semitism Committee of UJA of Greater Toronto. As my trip to space approached, I seized the opportunity to merge purposes, intertwining my role with confronting anti-Semitism in Canada with the fulfillment of a boyhood dream. The experience of going to space last Friday, William Shatner said it better than I will, was breathtaking and emotional. I saw a small planet surrounded by blackness, protected by a thin layer of atmosphere. The horizon was 1,200 miles away. That's how far you could see. You don't see borders, frontiers, or division. The topography flattens to pattern and color. And the further out you go, the more you see of our planet, the less you see things that divide us: borders, frontiers, politics, ideology, religion, and hate. What the Jewish community is confronted with today is a crisis. In my 66 years, anyone my age will have experienced some anti-Semitism, taunts in the schoolyard and graffiti on the synagogue. But never have I seen a time when hate has escalated to the point where terror has reached our community, has been tolerated, normalized, and even accepted. This proclamation we see behind me, Unity Against Anti-Semitism, and I thank the mayor and all who signed. This is an inspiring event, but it's an event. My trip to space was an event. It was a peak experience of my lifetime, but it's just an event. Anti-Semitism never ends. We need to talk about it every day, to make it a priority every day, to talk to our friends, our colleagues, and our neighbors. Jews make up 1% of the Canadian population, yet in the wake of the horrific massacre in Israel on October 7th and unspeakable acts of terror, sexual violence, the hate crimes against our community has reached epic proportions. I heard today 70% of hate crimes target at religious and ethnic minorities are targeted against Jews. 1% of the Canadian population is exposed to 70% of the hate crimes. In the streets of Toronto and across Canada, there is vandalism, harassment, and violence of Jewish people. Jewish students face threats and intimidation daily, not just in the quad or in the schoolyard, but by their misguided peers, but from their teachers in their classrooms, their professors in the lecture halls. I was able to take a few meaningful items with me to outer space. In addition to pictures of my grandparents who came to this country to escape pogroms and violence against Jews in Russia. Picture of my father-in-law with a tattoo on his arm that he received in Auschwitz, where his entire family perished. I took a number of items representing the cause to fighting anti-Semitism. I brought something to give to the mayor. It's a dog tag, a symbol of solidarity with the hostages in Gaza, with the people of Israel. And I hope someone on her staff will give this to her and that she'll wear it if she comes and when she comes to stand with our community at rallies, vigils, and other events. Mark Sandler mentioned that there is a tool to understanding and fighting anti-Semitism. This is it. It bears the trademark of the Government of Canada. It's the Canadian Handbook on the IRA Working Definition of Anti-Semitism. It's the culmination of years of effort of human rights leaders from all over the world and from all faiths. I encourage you to look it up online, download it, read it. It clearly articulates what anti-Semitism is and what it isn't. Find it, print it, read it yourself, and refer it to your friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Henry, and happy travels. Mary Rowland. Mary Rowland is a committed Christian advocate. She promotes love and understanding across religious boundaries through interfaith dialogue. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. My name is Mary Roland. I am a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a retired teacher, a neighbor, a friend, a graduate of Toronto's public school system and the University of Toronto, a member of the United Church of Canada, and a proud member of the Interfaith group. Today I'm sitting here, as a proud resident of the city of Toronto, where I was born and have called home for the entirety of my 65 years. I am here because I am extremely concerned about the alarming increase in hate speech in this city, and in particular, anti-Semitic words and acts. Toronto's motto is diversity is our strength. And over the course of my life, I have seen this city become one of the most diverse cities in the world. But diversity means nothing if it is not accompanied by inclusion and equality, which requires citizens of this city working together to ensure that everyone who lives here can benefit from the opportunities the city offers. And that includes being able to live without fear of violence, discrimination, hate, and intolerance. Over the last 5 years, the way we speak to and about each other in this city has deteriorated. It has now become acceptable to shout and insult others when we disagree with them, or call each other names, and blame people who are different than us for problems in our city. Our glorious differences are leading to division, not strength. This is bad enough, but when those words, whether spoken or written, are filled with hate, we are setting ourselves on a dangerous path. Hate is a human emotion, but it can be healed with compassion, love, understanding, and a willingness to engage. It can also be fueled, and left untreated, can entrench itself at a dizzying pace. It can escalate to acts of hate that can harm individuals in society. History has illustrated for us time and time again, century by century, that hate speech is the foundation of genocide. Surely we can learn and stop it. I am personally offended and horrified to see members of the Jewish community in Toronto being targeted because of the conflict in the Middle East. When Jewish children in this city cannot attend school in safety and joy as my children once did, every single person in this city should be horrified. When members of the Jewish community cannot attend their houses of worship without fear, as I can, every single person in this city should be horrified. When Jewish business establishments are targeted by vandalism, their customers threatened, every single person in this city should be horrified. When students at our university cannot walk across campus safely, as I once did, every single person in this city should be horrified. This is not politics. This is not peaceful protest. These children, families, and students have nothing to do with the conflict in the Middle East, despite what many of us would have us believe. It is hate for Jews, it is anti-Semitism, and it is ugly, and it is wrong. Sadly, Jews are not the only group targeted by hate in this city. Blacks, Muslims, Asians, people with disabilities, members of the LGBTQ community, and many others have and continue to suffer microaggressions on the streets every day. And it's getting worse. And I acknowledge that many of those incidents would not come to my attention as they should. But the incidents of anti-Semitism are on the news. And what saddens me is there seems to be a growing acceptance of anti-Semitism. It is met too often by silence, and silence is complicity. I am shocked at the silence of this city's residents, and I am scared because our history in the last 100 years teaches us what happens when good, thoughtful, law-abiding, tolerant people remain silent. I am not a political activist. I don't do rallies. I have rarely written a letter to a politician, but I feel compelled to stand up for what is right. I feel compelled to stand up and fight for a tolerant, safe city where we can celebrate and benefit from our differences. I hope the city, its leaders, and all the citizens will stand up with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pastor Sharon Edwards. Sharon represents the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, in Toronto. Pastor Edwards fosters Jewish Christian understanding and interfaith relationships. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I just want to say I appreciate this committee, the ability to be able to speak on behalf of Christians and those who support the Jewish committee. I'm thankful that Councillor Brad Bradford is my councillor in my area, and I'm pleased that he's part of this committee. And Councillor Pasternak, I wanted to let you know that I was here in front of a mic almost 10 years ago, standing up for the Israeli community for the apartheid demonstration, Israel apartheid. So I was here then, and I'm here now. As a part of ICEJ, I just want to let you know that 2 Torontonians began this organization. And this is our, I want to pass it over to you as well, but this is our magazine that's been going out for 40 years. And it was started by Mervyn Merla Watson, along with other people who are from Toronto and had the catacombs in the United Church, just on Bloor Street. And we're continuing it nowadays, and we're doing a lot of things in Israel, but we're also having the opportunity to stand with the Jewish community. And we work with them. Donna Holbrook, who is our national director, she has been part of all of the different organizations here in Toronto, even in Canada. Our national headquarters are here in Toronto, and we want to be proud of this city. We are very thankful, me as pastor, that December has been designated here to be Christian Heritage Month. We are in a month where Holocaust Survivor Month is being recognized, as well as our veterans community. So I was a teacher as well as some others before I became a pastor, but I work with an organization that distributes literature to the Jewish community. And so I'm part of that, and I also go to churches and let them know how important it is for us to stand with Israel, with the Jewish community. And I know that a lot of churches need to be aware that we are not to be politically correct, but we do need to stand with our heritage, which is the Word of God that comes out of the Tanakh. And I feel that's part of my responsibility when I do go to churches, when I do go to organizations. And it has been forgotten that the Christian community is one of the most persecuted communities all over the world. I brought another picture with me, and this has been on the walls of my home. And when I joined the Walk with Israel, this was one of the posters that were given to me. And I took this home and I put it up on my walls, and I pray for Yitzhak, who is still one of the hostages that is there, a 69-year-old, and pray daily. The other thing that ICEJ has been doing since October 7th is we have had a prayer gathering, global prayer gathering. Every single day, we're up to around 410 or 12 days since October 7th, when we have had 2 hours of prayer daily, every single day, with community members all over the world, pastors. We get teaching, we have praise, we have prayer, and we believe it's made a difference that the many rockets that came down on Israel had no effect, did not hurt anybody. And I believe it's because of the prayers of the Jews, the Christians, all others, even Arab Christians, that because of our prayers, we're seeing a difference. And I believe it's very important that we have these prayers, that we believe that Toronto, not just Toronto, Canada, will stand up against anti-Semitism, that we would pray for our Jewish brothers and sisters. And I offer my sympathy, my compassion, and my comfort, because our Isaiah 40 verse 1 is what we say, comfort, comfort my people. And we are here to comfort the people of God that have been selected from Abraham on to be his chosen people. And we stand with you. We want you to know that we do stand with you, and we love you. We want you to know I am also part of a Messianic congregation that meets on Shabbat at 500 Coldstream, and we are in the Lawrence and Bathurst area, and there we pray for our community around us. We look for ways that we can show our sympathy and our support when we are in this area. We know how important it is. We were thankful when we saw some police support there, and we were praying for more police support that will come and to follow these laws. And I just thank everyone who has been able to present at this committee, that we are able to do something to be able to support this community, and you have our support, so thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do my best James Pasternak impersonation, as he just asked me to take over the meeting. Mike, you're welcome to come back if you'd like. Okay, all right, enjoy back there. Thank you very much, Pastor Edwards, for your incredible words of solidarity. I'd like to now call up Senior Pastor David Larmer. He's senior pastor of King Street Church. He's a dedicated Christian leader and ally, fostering interfaith understanding, combating hate through community engagement. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me, and it is an honor to be here, and I've learned something from every presenter, and I am a part of the Christian community. I did prepare something, but I'm going to go right off script because I think most of it's been said by others. So I do want to echo what has already been said about the 1% of the population, the Jewish community, is the recipient of 70% of hate crimes in our country. And that's deeply concerning to see that exponential ratio, especially when you consider the contribution that the Jewish community have made to our country and to the world. 0.2% of the global population is responsible for 22% of Nobel Prizes. They have made an unbelievable contribution, and in our own city here in Toronto, where they have made a contribution to healthcare and to the business community and to education, to the arts, and on it goes. And so they call it a Judeo-Christian worldview for a reason. There is literally to be no daylight between the two of us. The Christian worldview is very compatible. We have so much in common with our Jewish, and I like what Pastor Jason had said, and I say it to our church family, our elder siblings. The Jewish community, we owe them a great deal. We owe them the Torah, the prophets, the Tanakh. Our Lord Jesus Christ was Jewish. The apostles were Jewish. It is the roots of our faith. And so we are deeply committed to being friends of the Jewish community. I do acknowledge today, and I think in this kind of setting it's worth stating, the Christian community has not always gotten it right. And in fact, I spoke with a new Jewish friend recently, and they said to me, be patient with us. We're learning to trust again. And I thought, you know what, that's super okay to learn to trust again and to go slow. But I say to our church family, representing about 1,000 or so worshipers, most as part of our church family, I say that we need to build bridges of relational trust with the Jewish community with no agenda apart from friendship. I do believe we are better together. I wrote a letter of solidarity that I circulated to colleagues and friends, Christian clergy. 50 or so clergy signed it, representing tens of thousands of Christians within the GTA. So you do have friends here within the Christian community. We are wanting to make that circle bigger. I also need to acknowledge maybe the elephant in the room, that we have not made the circle as big as we want to make it. It is meeting some measure of resistance, which I am disappointed, but we are deeply committed to working hard and broadening that support. And I am cultivating relationships with rabbis. I have 3 rabbis now that I consider to be my friends that I didn't know before October 7th. We have lunch together, we're going to a Raptors game together. I was invited into Yom Kippur to sit on a panel and to talk about the Christian faith and our solidarity with our Jewish friends. Having a rabbi into our church in a few months' time, early in 2025, we had Rabbi Wernick in, who hosted an educational Seder meal. We had 250 of our church family there who are learning the Jewish roots of what we call, again, the Lord's Supper, but it is actually Jewish Passover, and it was a wonderful celebration. We are with you, and I know that there is this Jewish custom that when someone dies, they call it sitting Shiva, where you just show up and you're present. And we want to bring more and more people who will be present, whether it's Shepherd and Bathurst or whether it's just showing up to events. And because I do believe we belong together and we are family. We pray for 10 hostages by name on Sundays. We have done that throughout the 10 Words series that we had taught through recently. We pray, Lord, bring them home, and never again. We need to work hard for that. The city of Toronto is a wonderful city. I was born and raised here. And I do believe we are drifting somewhat. Leaders lead. And so if you have a circle of influence, which we all have in this room, I want to encourage you to exercise it. I'm doing my part, and I want to invite you to do yours. You wouldn't be here if you weren't willing to do your part. So I just want to share a word of affirmation and hopefully a word of hope. I believe we will get through this, and we will get through this together. So, Am Israel Kai.
Thank you so much, Pastor Larmer. It really means a lot. I think the next meeting we'll have is probably an Interfaith Shabbat dinner inspired by your words. The next speaker I'd like to introduce is Madhukar Murthy, a Canadian Hindu entrepreneur and senior executive with global business expertise, a dedicated volunteer who works actively with an incredible organization in Kona, a grassroots advocacy network of Hindu leaders across North America. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you. My name is Madhukar, representing the Council of Hindus of North America. We comprise about 4% of the population of Canada. We are the alliance the Jewish community needs. So let's do more of this. I grew up in apartheid South Africa, so I understand very, very clearly what it feels like to be a second-class citizen whose community is subject to state-sanctioned violence. Today, in 2024, in Canada, I stand before you as a Hindu who is a second-class citizen whose community is subject to state-sponsored violence. What does this mean? What do I mean by this? Is it just sort of gobble? No. Let me tell you what it means. It means that Canada's largest terrorist attack was committed against my community. The Air India bombing, Kanishka, happened in the 1980s. It was us. It means that the security forces did not investigate it properly because it was us. It means that when Pierre Poilievre calls out the terrible attack on civilians on October 7th, he can name Hamas, but he cannot name the perpetrators founded by 2 public Canadian inquiries of Canada's largest terrorist attack when he speaks about the Kanishka bombing. That's what it means to be a second-class citizen. What it means to be a second-class citizen is that when Mayor Patrick Brown passes legislation to prevent protests around places of worship, there's a little piece of that bylaw that allows protests against places of worship if they're against a foreign government. So Hindu temples are therefore fair game. That's what it means to be a second-class citizen. What it also means to be a second-class citizen is for all of us in this room to be able to use the swastika, an ancient Hindu symbol, to represent and speak of the Nazi Hakenkreuz, a completely different symbol of brutality and oppression. But we can all use swastika because we're second-class citizens. There's no consequence. We just need to communicate what's important for the rest. That's what it means to be a second-class citizen. So I stand before you in the apartheid state of Canada as a second-class citizen, and I'm very, very saddened to see my Jewish brothers and sisters subject to the brutal anti-Semitism that you have been subject through after October 7th. I'm very, very saddened, but I'm not surprised. Because in the case of Toronto and Canada, first they came for the Hindus, and we all said nothing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to invite Kirsten Berry. She's the chair of the Christian Allyship Committee for Avi.
I'm the committee chair for Allied Voices for Israel, and I thought I would start with just some numbers for perspective. So on this planet today, there's roughly 1.4 billion people that live in China. There's 1.4 billion people that live in India, 2.6 billion people who are Christian, 1.9 billion people who are Muslim, 3.5 million people living in the USA, and just 15 million Jewish people on this planet. And I think that's really important because even if every single Jewish person on this planet stood up to fight anti-Semitism, the reality is it's just not enough. And so we need allies to stand up in support of our Jewish brothers and sisters at this time to help amplify their message and stand in solidarity. And that's why I'm so proud to be part of this Interfaith Summit event, and I'm very glad to have been invited. The Jewish people are the most heavily persecuted group of people historically in the world. But you wouldn't know that because of the way anti-Semitism operates. One of the biggest obstacles to combating Jew hate is getting people to take it seriously. And it is so serious. As the oldest form of hate, it doesn't take much more than tiny embers to grow into a full burning forest. The cumulative impact of the vile stench of anti-Semitism in our society is an inversion of reality and the desensitization to the hurt and suffering of our Jewish community. And of course, we know it can and does get much worse. One thing I've noticed about Jew haters is there's some who are overt, they're in your face. But there are those who operate in our society who are covert. And I've learned to recognize them by their cognitive dissonance. by the inconsistency with which they apply the values that they profess to have. I'll give you an example. There's somebody, and of course I won't name names, who has built a reputation in his career for compassion, for being philanthropic, for giving back to the community, who openly bans Zionists as part of their business. And that inconsistency of value application makes Jew haters who are more covert easily spotted. And so I pay attention and I watch. Pardon?
Who is this person?
I won't name. Sorry, I don't feel comfortable. But thank you. So the inconsistency with which they apply their values, and we watch them every day as they defend the indefensible of their behavior. There are so many people in North America who I watch, and their minds just cannot bend to accept the simple truth that there is evil in this world, and there are people who just for no justifiable, understandable reason hate Jews to their bones. It's easy for us here in Canada to forget that Jews don't live like they do here everywhere in the world. There are places in the world where Jews live in fear. They live persecuted, and they live as second and third class citizens. This is not acceptable in Canada, that this type of hatred is making its way onto our streets. As a Christian who's familiar with the history of the Jewish people, to be alive at a time when the Jewish people have what was the wildest dreams of the heroes of my faith, Esther, Moses, Joshua, King David, they all contributed to Jewish self-determination and autonomy, and understood that the Jewish people needed a state, a country of their own, and that is the modern state of Israel. This is a historically significant time, and it pains me to see so many people who are blinded to it. I know I'm not alone, and that my voice represents thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Canadians who have actually been intimidated into silence. Zionism is an article of faith for Christians and Jews. Article 2 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms protects freedom of religion. And Zionism, again, is an article of faith for both Christians and Jews. I attended an event that was at the Friends of Jesus Christ Church, in which close to 30 to 50 police officers were necessary in order to restrain protesters who were screaming hate towards the congregation as they were entering to celebrate an event that has been hosted in Toronto in celebration of Israel for over 20 years. I've never experienced hate directed at me that way, and that is not freedom of religion, to be intimidated that way as we go to worship, to celebrate, to watch little children get up to perform and express their hearts. We must uphold respect for each other's right to religious freedom, life-loving religious freedom. If you go to St. Andrew's Church, which is not far from here, my family's name has been memorialized for our contributions in military service for Canada. Both my grandfathers served in World War II, and I see them having contributed to the promise of never again. And I will dedicate my life to fulfilling and helping them maintain that promise. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this event.
Kristen, thank you. Thank you so much for those words. That concludes our speakers list for today. I just want to thank everyone for coming this morning and sharing your thoughts. Powerful statements that urge all of us to do more, to say more, and to work towards a unified voice against anti-Semitism and hate in all its forms. I think I can deem the Interfaith Summit against anti-Semitism and hate a great success, but sad that we have to hold it. It was the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs who once remarked long before current events, quote, "If we want to fight anti-Semitism, let us walk tall and proud as Jews, and let us work with all humanity to banish hatred forever." The Jewish community and all communities wants what every peace-loving, freedom-loving Canadian wants: to go about one's daily lives in peace and security without the threat of intimidation and hate, to pray in one's faith, to attend schools in one faith, and build institutions that everyone can cherish and enjoy. If we cannot leave our places of worship, keep our places of worship safe, then nobody is safe. If we cannot drop our children off at school knowing they are safe, then no one is safe. Our faith groups, with their place of worship as an anchor, are doing great things in their local communities that keep our city whole. Government cannot do it all. The food banks, out of the Colle program, prayer and cohesion, counseling, and clergy building hope where there is despair and light when there is darkness. We are reminded that ours is a city whose success is embedded not in a historical cultural revolution, but the appeal to civility and restraint. We do not have in our shared experience the call to arms, but rather the calling of our inner strength. The truths that we share and the values that we build on leads to the civility that we all cherish. And as such, we consistently try to do what's best in our own personal lives, in our workplace, to our family, our neighbors, our city, which at the same time recognizing the mistakes we make are not fatal. So whether you were born here or chose Toronto to settle here to begin anew, to keep this city great, to go about our daily lives in peace and comfort, freedom and dignity, we must work as one, not just sharing a postal code, but the values and character that define who we are. Let us look back at this time and place, that we did our part, that we never wavered, that we stood up against hate when few would. In a few weeks, Jews and non-Jews around the world will be lighting the Hanukkah candles. Many ceremonies will take place in public settings, steps from democratic institutions where many of the laws enshrining our freedom have been passed. As the candles are lit, let us pray that once again we can feel safe in Toronto. Our goal in prayer is simple: to bring light, tikkun olam, preparing the world, so that all faiths can live and pray in peace, working together to restore our great city to one of civility, love, and respect, adhering to the truism that God's work in this world must truly be our own. I want to thank everybody for giving time today. Very moving comments. I'd like to thank all the groups. I don't have a list of the groups. Oh, and of course, I'm reminded that on your way out, feel free to sign the proclamation, a very important statement of what we're here all about. So once again, be well, be safe. Thank you so much for coming today. I think we have sent a strong message to all levels of government to take action. Thank you.